What's up, YouTube? Back with another episode of Dan's Garage. This time working again on my 4Runner. Today I installed a modification that I guess could be seen as somewhat controversial. Some people may think that it helps. Some people may think that it's nothing but snake oil. There seems to be different opinions on it on either side. But the fact remains that every single engine has to have a positive crankcase ventilator, a valve, because when you have parts turning inside of an enclosed space, it creates pressure. It's the same reason why, I think I might still have it over here, it's the same reason why I had to change out my rear differential vent, because I was beginning to see some weepage of the seals, of my axle seals in my rear axle back there, because this was completely blocked up. I took it off. I ended up buying a new one. I took it off, soaked it in gasoline, and now it turns and moves like it should. These should be able to, this is just an aside, these should be able to turn, if I can do it, sorry, I'm on a phone, relatively easily, like so. If you can't turn it by hand like that, then you either need to clean it or get a new one. Be that as it may, anytime you have parts, whether it's in a differential or it's in an engine, that are turning, it creates pressure. That pressure is vented off via the PCV valve, which is the positive crankcase ventilation valve. It's a simple valve. It's a one-way ball valve that allows air and gases and pressure to escape, but doesn't allow anything to get back in, so you don't have like a vacuum leak or anything like that. Now, usually what happens is that the air is vented from the PCV valve, which is down in there, up into a spot into the intake, right there. And that was done very easily with this hose right here. So this hose, this end was connected right there, as you can see where that hose clamp is. This end was connected right there, where you can see where that hose clamp is. And usually this wouldn't be a problem, except that the air that's coming out of the PCV isn't simply air. It's full of all kinds of other stuff too. Mostly, it is mostly air, but it does have oil particles and unburned fuel and all kinds of stuff. And it's mostly from engine blow-by. Whether you just built a brand new engine or your engine has 400,000 miles on it, you're going to have some amount of blow-by. That is getting past the rings. It's just the fact of an engine. It doesn't seal perfectly well. It seals very well most of the time, or at least it should, but it doesn't seal perfectly well. So what happens is that air that escapes, that is allowed out of the PCV valve, gets put back into the intake side to be recombusted and hopefully sent out the tailpipe. As mentioned, the problem with that can be that it's full of oil vapor and can gum up the intakes and can gum up the back of the valve, the intake valves and everything like that, because the oil vapor is depositing on the back of the valve. This is mostly an issue with direct injected engines. Now, my engine here on the 4Runner, what is it? I cannot think of it. 1GRFE, I'm sorry. The 1GRFE is a V6 engine that Toyota has used for 2 decades now at this point. It is a port injected engine, which means that the fuel is injected at the port. So it's not inside of the combustion chamber like a direct injected engine is. So direct injection means that the fuel injector is directly inside of the combustion chamber. It's placed similarly to the area of the spark plug, if you want to think of it like that. So because it's port injected, it sprays fuel on the back of the intake valve, and it gets atomized and pushed in because of the air coming into the engine or into the cylinder. And most of the time, that's good enough to clean the back of the valve. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes even with a port injected engine, you can get issues of your intake valves getting gummed up with oil and stuff like that. So to prevent that, people will choose to install what's called an oil catch can, and that is the modification that I did today. So I ordered just a regular oil catch can off of Amazon. It wasn't made specifically for this engine, but it was a universal kit. They do make ones that are specific to This engine, JLT is a company. They're not a sponsor. They make a kit that's specifically made for this, but it's $100 and something, and I'm sure it's very, very well made. I just didn't feel like spending that. If you look and do a little bit of research, if you want to do this sort of a modification to your car, you don't have to just do it to a 4Runner. And every single car will have something like this that you can do it to. There are a couple different options out there. There's the most important part is the thing how a catch can works. Let me back up. How a catch can works is that it'll take the air coming out of the PCV valve, which is right there, and it has all this length of hose to cool down and condense, and then it'll travel inside of this can right here, as you can see. So the oil vapor and everything will go down into here, and then there's a baffle in there. It's like a little round disc full of holes to promote the oil to condense and allow the oil droplets to get out of the air, and just regular air without oil droplets to go back in to the intake. So oil vapor and air and all that stuff is coming through here. It's going down into the can, and it's passing through a baffle, and there's also a brass filter. It's a micron filter that it passes through. That's the last little resort to get all the last little droplets of air out, and then nice clean air theoretically is supposed to come out of this hose back into my intake. So that's how it works. So it works by pulling air, by pulling oil out of the air that's already passing through the PCV. So there's a couple different options out there. I highly recommend getting a catch can if you want to do this that has at least a baffle on it. If you just have a can that has two hoses with an emptiness down in here, this whole can is empty, and then a hose going back, you're really not going to do a whole lot, to be honest with you. You have to have at least a baffle in there. And when you search, if and when you search for oil catch cans, you'll see one that says, catch can, this has a baffle, something like that on Amazon. But I also recommend getting one with a brass micron filter. It's just a very, very fine mesh, small little filter that helps to get more oil out of the air. This one was, I think, $48 off of Amazon. So relatively cheap, and you can do it. It came with about, I'd say, 4.5 or 5 feet of this hose right here. It's a universal hose. It was slightly too big for my ports. This hose is a little too big for that port back there, and a little too big for that port right there, so I had to kind of cinch the hose clamps down a little bit. But essentially what you do is when you go in here, if you're going to be doing this on a 4Runner, you have your simple clips right here. You're going to reach back in there, you're going to compress this clip like this, turn it, and then pull it down, and then you're going to pull it off of the PCV system. You do the same thing on this side. This clip fell off, or I was using it. I was trying to use it. There it is. Same exact clip. It's going to go right on here. I'm sorry for the camera work, by the way. I'm still using a phone. And all you got to do is just pinch this close, and it'll open it up if it wants to focus. There you go. You'll pinch this, and it'll open it up for you. So you pinch those two things. You pull this hose off. And now you're left with your, let me get a pointer. That should help. Hopefully. My workbench is a mess. Alright, nice long pointer. Pull it off of, if I can get it to work, down there. If you can see that, if you can see where my pointer is. That's the actual PCV valve down there. It's pretty easy to get to. If you're going to do this modification, I recommend to just get a new PCV anyway. A lot of times that little ball valve in there can get gummed up with oil. So they're like $8 from the dealer. Just might as well replace it if you're going to do this route anyway. So you have an exposed. I actually have a PCV valve somewhere. I'll have to dig it out and get you guys a part number for this engine. An extra one. Also, if you want it, reach out to me on any of the comments, and we can hook up, and I'll get you a DM maybe on Discord, and I can send it over to you just for shipping if anybody wants it. So I don't know why I have an extra one, but I do. So your PCV valve lives down there, right? And then you're gonna have this port that's open right there, and right. I can just point with my finger at this point. Right there, this port will be open. So your catch can has two sides to it. I'm going to try to do this whole video in one take because I hate editing, to be honest with you, so there's some mistakes. I'll correct them. You'll see there's an inside and there's an outside, right? So what you have to remember is that that's not, it's a little reversed because of this. So the inside of the catch can is taking air in from the PCB, right? So air is coming out of the PCB, but it doesn't go into the outside. It goes out of the PCB into the inside, the quote IN side of the catch can, and it condenses and oil vapor separates and air comes out back to the intake. I know it's a little backwards, but bear with me. So air goes out of the PCB to the in and out of the catch can back to the intake. All right. I chose to mount this using the 4Runner's existing holes right here. It has one here and one here. This is an M8 by 1.25 bolt. I got a bolt that was 3/4 of an inch. I got 2 washers for it. It fits in there perfectly so that this bracket isn't rubbing up against my paint, causing a rust issue. And like I said, I just mounted this in the easiest location that I could. So, if you want a more detailed write-up, I just got done putting it on. I didn't think to make a video, of course, until I just got done. So if you want a more detailed write-up, I could take it all apart and do it again, but it's fairly self-explanatory. The directions are absolutely awful with this, so I won't even show them to you. But it's fairly self-explanatory. If you have any questions, and this goes not just for this car, not just for a Toyota 4Runner, but for any car, reach out to me, DM on Wiki. I think I have a Discord that can help maybe speed up the process of talking to people. So I'm going to see if I can't find that part number for you. I have a bunch of extra parts in my parts department. And I apologize again for the mess on my workbench. I'm not proud of it, but I just got done with a project. So bear with me. Bunch of extra gaskets and crush washers, and because these cars have a crazy issue with their calipers seizing all the time. If you're MFing the screen right now, trust me, I'm with you. Don't worry. I replaced these calipers so many times it's not even funny. There it is. All right. One quick note on the calipers. As they seize, I recommend doing the 5th gen 4Runner upgrade. I have a 4th generation 4Runner, and I just put 5th generation calipers on the rear because the rear, I needed to do the brakes in the rear. Now the fronts, since I've owned this truck for a little less than a year, both fronts, both passenger side and driver side, have seized up, but I already put new 4th gen calipers on here. So when they fail, and they will, I'll do a 5th gen upgrade in the front. Quick note about 5th generation upgrade. The rotor size is different on the fronts. The rotor size for the rears are the exact same. The part numbers are going to be different because of the center of the hub where these mount right here is a little bit different. So the bolt pattern and the distance between the bolt pattern is the same on the hub, but this is a little bit off due to just different anatomy back there. But from all the research that I've done, and I know I'm going off a little bit on a tangent on the brakes here, but I believe it's necessary because these things have such crazy brake issues. What you want to get is 5th generation calipers with 5th generation pads, so 2010 to 2015. Anything after 2015, they change the brakes, especially on the front. 5th generation caliper, 5th generation pads, 4th generation rotors in the rear, just for the rear, right? Up here, you want to do 5th generation caliper, 5th generation rotor, 5th generation pad. So everything's 5th generation up here. The only thing that you're going to have to do is bend the heat shield back a little bit to accommodate a slightly larger caliper. Now the rotor thickness is a little bit different too. I believe it's thicker by like 13 millimeters or something like that. It's not much, but it's enough to increase. You get a little bit better stopping power, but the main thing that I want is I don't want to be putting brakes on this thing every year. It's become a yearly tradition for me. Anyway, the PCB that I have for the 1G RFE here is the part number. I always love videos that include part numbers. So if you're doing this job, get this part number. If you want this PCV, this actual PCV valve that goes to this engine, just comment in the section. I'll give you my Discord. We can DM through there, and I will send it to you just at the shipping rate. So if you have any questions about the catch can, I'm sorry I didn't film it as I was going. It's stupid hot in my garage right now. I was sweating and cursing. It's not that hard of a job. It really isn't. It's just getting, I highly recommend, and I didn't do this, I highly recommend getting good quality hose clamps that turn freely and don't bind up and aren't just a piece of crap. I was kind of dealing with that, so if and when I have to go back through here, I'll probably get a smaller hose, and I'll probably get really good hose clamps for it. But one thing that I did real quick, so you don't have a kink in this hose, because this is downwards. This hose back here is coming straight out, so there's no kink. It's a straight line all the way back, all the way to here. This hose I would have to bend up, and it might get kinked. So I used a plastic elbow, a 3/8 elbow, which it should be fine. It shouldn't be seeing like a lot of heat or anything. A plastic elbow, just like this. And all I did was cut a section of hose, and I put my elbow right there. So I have a hose going up to there and the hose coming out here. So it's just a little plastic elbow. This catch can, real quick, has a small little dipstick right there. You unscrew, check the oil level. And if the oil level's full, you're supposed to drain it. The problem with where I mounted mine is that right now I don't know how much oil vapor or how much oil this catch can is actually going to get. I plan on checking it maybe once a week or so. I don't drive it terribly hard, but when I'm on an on-ramp, you know, I put the pedal to the floor just to, you know, blow out the pipes a little bit. I think it's good for an engine to do that every now and then, but that's a whole other topic. I plan on checking this once a week at least, and if it's collecting a lot of vapor and a lot of oil, I'm gonna have to change it out on a somewhat regular basis. The problem with that is how I mounted this. There's really not a whole lot of mounting options here to put it. How I mounted it, I'm gonna actually have to take it off of the bracket right here, but that's not too difficult. I could take these hoses off. I probably don't even have to take the hoses off, to be honest with you. Take it off the bracket, pull the whole thing out to like here, and unscrew the bottom, and then it comes apart. And then I can dump it and clean it up and go from there. So, long story long, if you have any questions about the catch can and how to mount it and how that all works, feel free to reach out to me. Again, thanks so much, YouTube. My goal in my info section is to make videos that maybe not a whole lot of people have you know, videos on. Yeah, I'm not going to make a video on how to do brakes unless it's like a very specific brake application for this vehicle. Hence my other video about changing the wheel studs on the rear. So I couldn't find that video anywhere, and I thought it was super, super helpful the way that I did it. There are videos on how to do catch cans, but maybe not specifically for this car or how to mount them. But I also believe that I value having a personal relationship with any viewer, and I will gladly answer any question to the best of my ability. So please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks, guys. Thanks a bunch. Have a good day.